The desert wind carried dust through the windows of the Bandidos MC clubhouse in Phoenix, Arizona. Inside, the rumble of Harley engines mixed with the clink of beer bottles and rough laughter. It was supposed to be just another Saturday night gathering for the brotherhood, until she appeared at their door. Maria Santos was barely 8 years old, her small frame trembling as she stood in the doorway. Dirt streaked her tear-stained cheeks, and her clothes were torn from running through the desert scrub. The room fell silent, as every patched member turned to look at this child who had somehow found her way to them in the middle of nowhere. Club President Jake "Thunder" Morrison approached slowly, his massive frame softening as he knelt down to her eye level. His weathered hands, marked with scars from decades of riding and fighting, reached out gently. "What's wrong, little one?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The child's response would haunt every man in that room. "He took my mom," she whispered, her voice breaking with each word. "The bad man with the snake tattoo on his neck. He said she owes him money, but Mama never hurt nobody." Her small hands clutched a torn photograph of a woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. The resemblance was unmistakable. This was her daughter. Thunder's jaw tightened as he exchanged glances with his brothers. Every man in that room understood what those words meant. Someone had crossed a line that should never be crossed, and now an innocent child was paying the price. If you believe in justice and protecting the innocent, hit that subscribe button, because this story is just getting started, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Thunder lifted Maria into his arms, feeling her tiny body shake against his leather vest. The clubhouse, moments before filled with casual conversation, now buzzed with a different energy entirely. Vice President Carlos "Viper" Ramirez stepped forward, his face grim with recognition. He'd seen too many cases like this in his years as a former detective. "Tell us everything you remember, mija," Viper said gently, pulling up a chair beside them. Maria's story unfolded in broken fragments. Her mother, Elena, worked 2 jobs to support them both, cleaning offices at night and serving tables during the day. 3 days ago, a man with cold eyes and a serpent tattoo wrapped around his throat had come to their small apartment. The man claimed Elena owed him $15,000 for her brother's gambling debts. When she explained her brother had died in a car accident 6 months earlier, he'd laughed cruelly. "Debts don't die with people, lady," he'd said, grabbing Elena by the arm. "You got 3 days to find my money, or I find other ways for you to pay." Maria had hidden in the bedroom closet when he returned, watching through the crack in the door as he dragged her screaming mother away. She'd waited until nightfall, then ran through the desert toward the lights she could see in the distance, lights that led her to the Bandidos clubhouse. Road Captain Tommy "Diesel" Chen was already pulling up maps on his phone, cross-referencing locations with known criminal operations in the area. The Brotherhood was mobilizing, and every man present understood that sleep wouldn't come until this little girl's mother was safely home where she belonged. Within an hour, the Bandidos had transformed from a social gathering into a tactical operation. Sergeant-at-Arms Mike "Bulldog" O'Connor spread detailed maps across the pool table, while members shared intelligence about local criminal networks. The description of the snake tattoo had triggered recognition in several minds. "Sounds like Vincent Serpent Kozlov," growled Diesel, his years of military reconnaissance training evident in how he studied the terrain. "Russian enforcer who's been moving up from Tucson, taking over loan shark operations. He's got a compound about 40 miles east, uses it for his collection business." The way he said "collection business" made it clear everyone understood the brutal reality behind those words. Thunder assigned teams with military precision. Road captain positions were filled by members with specific skill sets, former Marines, ex-police officers, and men who'd learned hard lessons on the streets. They would approach this methodically, not as vigilantes seeking revenge, but as protectors executing a rescue mission. Maria sat quietly in the corner, wrapped in Thunder's spare leather jacket, which engulfed her small frame like a protective cocoon. Club Mother Sarah, Viper's wife, had arrived with hot chocolate and gentle words, but the child's eyes remained fixed on the photograph of her mother, worn smooth from her constant touching. "We're going to bring her home, little warrior," Thunder promised, kneeling beside Maria once more. His voice carried the weight of a man who'd never broken his word to a child. The engines outside were already warming up, their deep rumble echoing across the desert like distant thunder, announcing an approaching storm that would change everything. The convoy of 12 Harleys cut through the pre-dawn darkness like steel wolves hunting their prey. Each rider wore full colors, their patches catching the moonlight as they navigated the winding desert roads toward Kozlov's compound. Thunder had made the decision to go in full force. This wasn't about stealth, but about sending an unmistakable message. Diesel's reconnaissance had revealed the compound's layout, a converted ranch house surrounded by shipping containers that served as holding areas for Kozlov's various illegal enterprises. Security cameras dotted the perimeter, but the Bandidos had faced worse odds in their decades of brotherhood. These men had served in combat zones, survived street wars, and protected their community through countless challenges. As they approached the outer fence, Thunder raised his fist, signaling the convoy to stop. The desert silence was broken only by the tick of cooling engines and the distant sound of generators powering the compound's lights. Through night vision binoculars, they could see 2 guards patrolling the entrance, assault rifles slung casually across their shoulders. Viper dismounted and approached Thunder, his former police training evident in his tactical assessment. Motion sensors on the main gate, but the eastern fence line looks vulnerable. We can cut through there, approach the main building from the blind spot behind those containers. His voice was steady, professional. This was a man who'd planned operations before. The Brotherhood moved with synchronized precision, each member understanding his role without need for lengthy explanations. Years of riding together, fighting together, and protecting their community had forged them into something more than a motorcycle club. They were a family, and family protected those who couldn't protect themselves. The real battle was about to begin. Thunder's boots hit the compound's gravel with deliberate force as the Bandidos spread out in tactical formation. The eastern fence had given way to Bulldog's wire cutters without triggering alarms, confirming Viper's assessment. Now they moved through shadows cast by towering shipping containers, each step bringing them closer to Elena Santos and the man who'd torn a family apart. The main building's windows glowed with harsh fluorescent light, and voices carried across the desert air, rough laughter mixed with what sounded like pleading. Thunder's jaw clenched as he recognized the desperation in that feminine voice. Eleanor was alive, but her terror was palpable even from a distance. Diesel positioned himself at the rear exit while 2 prospects covered the sides. This wasn't their first rescue operation. Over the years, the Bandidos had developed a reputation for protecting those the system failed to help. Abused women, threatened families, children caught in adult conflicts they never chose. The Brotherhood had always stepped up when law enforcement fell short. Through a partially open window, they could see Kozlov pacing before a woman tied to a chair. The serpent tattoo coiled around his throat like a living thing in the flickering light. He was explaining almost casually how her daughter would grow up without a mother unless certain debts were paid. His tone suggested this was routine business for him. Thunder made eye contact with each of his brothers, receiving silent nods of confirmation. Every man was in position, every escape route covered. The moment had arrived to show Vincent Kozlov what happened when predators targeted the innocent. If you're enjoying this story of brotherhood and justice, smash that like button and let me know in the comments what you think should happen next. The front door exploded inward as Thunder's boot connected with the cheap wood frame. 12 Bandidos poured through the entrance like an unstoppable force of nature, their presence filling the room with controlled menace. Kozlov spun around, his hand instinctively reaching for the pistol tucked into his waistband, but Viper's voice cut through his movement like a blade. "I wouldn't," Viper said calmly, his own weapon already drawn and steady. Former Phoenix PD, 23 years on the force. "I know exactly how this plays out if you make the wrong choice." The other armed men in the room found themselves facing similar situations as the Bandidos had moved with military precision to neutralize every threat. Elena Santos looked up through swollen eyes, her face showing the marks of 3 days in captivity. When she saw the patches and colors of the motorcycle club, confusion mixed with desperate hope. "My daughter." she whispered through split lips. "Please tell me Maria is safe." The maternal instinct was stronger than her own fear, even after everything she'd endured. Thunder stepped forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over Kozlov, who had raised his hands but maintained his defiant sneer. "Your daughter is safe, ma'am. She's the bravest little girl I've ever met, and she led us right to you." He turned to face the loan shark, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You made a mistake when you decided to terrorize a child." Kozlov attempted to maintain his composure, launching into explanations about business and debts and how these things worked in his world, but his voice cracked as he realized these weren't men who could be intimidated or bought off. These were protectors, and he had crossed into their territory by threatening an innocent family. Viper cut Elena's bonds with a tactical knife, while Bulldog secured the other men found throughout the compound. The shipping containers revealed the scope of Kozlov's operation: stolen goods, illegal weapons, and evidence of human trafficking that would keep federal prosecutors busy for years. This rescue had uncovered something far larger than a simple kidnapping. "Here's how this works," Thunder explained to Kozlov, his voice carrying the authority of a man who'd commanded respect on both sides of the law. "You're going to call off any debts associated with the Santos family. You're going to compensate Elena for her suffering. And then you're going to have a conversation with federal agents about your business operations." Elena struggled to stand, her legs weak from days of captivity, but her spirit remained unbroken. "I never even knew my brother had gambling debts," she said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "He died trying to get his life together, working construction, sending money home to help with Maria's school clothes." The injustice of her situation was clear to every man present. Kozlov's defiance crumbled as he realized the Bandidos had documented everything with photographs and video evidence. His illegal operation was finished, his freedom measured in minutes rather than years. The serpent tattoo that had once intimidated victims now seemed pathetic, a cartoon villain's prop on a man facing real consequences. Diesel had already contacted his federal law enforcement connections, men who understood the difference between criminal motorcycle clubs and organizations like the Bandidos who protected their communities. The sound of approaching helicopters confirmed that justice would be served through proper channels, with the evidence needed to ensure Kozlov never threatened another family. The sunrise painted the desert in shades of gold as the Bandidos convoy returned to their clubhouse. Elena Santos riding behind Thunder, her arms wrapped tightly around his waist. The 3-day nightmare was over, but the bonds forged in those dark hours would last a lifetime. Sometimes families are born from blood, and sometimes they're forged in the crucible of shared purpose. Maria's scream of joy echoed across the desert when she saw her mother dismount from the Harley. The reunion was everything the brotherhood had fought for: a child's laughter, a mother's tears of relief, and the knowledge that evil had not triumphed over innocence. Elena held her daughter as if she might disappear again, whispering promises in Spanish that she would never have to be afraid again. Thunder watched the reunion from a distance, his weathered face showing the satisfaction of a mission completed. These moments reminded him why the Bandidos existed, not for the stereotypes portrayed in movies or the fear mongered by media, but for times when good people needed protection from those who would harm them without conscience. Elena approached the club president, Maria's small hand clasped firmly in hers. "I don't know how to thank you," she began, but Thunder raised his hand gently. "You don't owe us thanks, ma'am. You just raised that little girl to be as brave as she already is. The world needs more people like her." His words carried the wisdom of a man who'd seen both the worst and best of humanity. As federal agents processed Kozlov and dismantled his criminal network, the Bandidos returned to their regular lives: mechanics, construction workers, veterans, and family men who happened to ride motorcycles and believe in protecting their community. If this story moved you, subscribe to hear more tales of brotherhood and justice, and remember to hit that notification bell so you never miss when ordinary people do extraordinary things for those who need protection most.